Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I know you guys have heard me share many times how awesome it is to start a podcast to get more visible and boost your sales or boost your income. I think it's a great way to build authority and credibility in your space or your niche. It's been an incredible way for me to build my brand. And today's episode is all about how to start a podcast for $100. If that's all you got. I interview my podcast editor and producer, Chelsea Weaver, and she's going to share a little bit about her story. And then she's going to go into if you have $100 to spend on your show, $300 to spend, and then $300 plus if that's what you have to spend on your podcast. But let me just talk a little bit about why having a podcast is really exciting and really a great way to build your brand and your visibility. So one of the ways that I use podcasting to grow my brand in my business is creating pod courses. You guys know that you can head over to my website, click on pod courses, and see all of the episodes that qualify for continuing education credit for LPCs and LMFTs. So that's one way that I monetize the show. Another way that I monetize the show is I offer coaching. So I help coaches, therapists, anyone really who wants to start a podcast to grow their brand, get more visible, monetize in a different way. So I started offering that. And that is, of course, bringing in some income, which is really exciting. Another way that I monetize the show is through affiliate marketing, as well as being a brand partner with an activewear company. So a lot of times people want to start a podcast because they just want to create content. They want to have more impact on the world. They want to make a difference. And I totally get that and respect that. However, if you don't have a plan to monetize or make money from your show, you can definitely burn out because you are going to be creating a lot of content. And along with creating the content, you're going to have some bills that you got to pay to create the podcast. So I think it's really important to know ahead of time, why are you starting this podcast? And if you're unsure what type of podcast you should create, definitely head over to my website, lisamustard.com, and click on the What Podcast Should You Create quiz, and you'll get my recommendation for what type of show would be best for you and your goals. And then from there, if you want to book a free 20-minute consultation, you definitely can. If you want to book that consultation without even taking the quiz, you can definitely do that as well. I'll put the form in the show notes for you guys to go ahead and fill out. I ask you to fill that out mainly so I know how to best help you before we do the call. Okay. It's not because I'm trying to upsell you on anything. I just want to know where you are today. So when we schedule that call, I can best help you and support you. Okay, you guys. So no more long-winding it. Let's just dive into this episode with Chelsea. She's going to share some tips. She's going to share her story also. And I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. So, hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm excited to introduce you to Chelsea Weaver. Chelsea is the editor of my show. So welcome to the show, Chelsea. It's awesome to have you.
Hello. It's nice to be here.
It is. Is this weird, like me interviewing you on the show? It's weird for me because I know that eventually you're going to get these tracks and you're going to have to put them all together. And so it's like double duty almost for you.
Yeah.
I wanted to have you on the show for a couple of reasons. Number one being that this is kind of a side gig for you that you hope to turn into a full-time thing. And I want you to share a little bit about your story and how you got here. But then the second thing that I really want to dive into deep with you is I've been doing these free podcast coaching consultations with therapists, actually not just therapists, with coaches. I'm trying to think who I've been talking to recently, coaches, people who want to start a podcast because they have a message to get out there, or they want to make a bigger impact, or they want to figure out another way to monetize their skill set. And I talk with them mainly about their niche, their formula for how they're going to plan their shows, what they need in terms of formatting their shows. And then we talk about marketing. We talk about how to monetize it. And then, of course, the technical questions come in. And so I wanted to have you on the show to kind of cover a couple different budgets. So if you only have $100, what do you do? If you have $300, what do you do? And let's say your budget is limitless, and what do you do at that point? So I think we can dive into those things. But first, could you share with our listeners a little bit about your story, however much you want to share, and how you got to where you are today?
Okay, so how do I make a long story short? So when I was in high school, I got into photography. I took some classes and I loved it. And I was like, when I grow up, I want to be a photographer. So I took classes, graduated, didn't really know what I was going to do. No one really talked to me about college and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of decided, oh, I'll go to college for photography. Did that, joined the military. And then eventually I was taking photos at drill when I can't remember if I was still in school or not, but I was taking photos of our annual training. And one of the officers came up to me and was like, hey, do you want to link up with the public affairs specialist? Someone's coming out here to take photos and stuff of the training. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know what a public affairs specialist is. So I had no idea that the military even offered that as a job. So I linked up with them, followed them around. I was like, this is what I want to do. Within a month or two, I had reached out to the unit and we had like a sit down conversation, kind of like an interview type thing. And they were really interested in me and I was like excited and ready to learn. So they started the process to transfer me, ended up landing a full-time job with the Guard. So that was like a huge plus because that's what I wanted. I wanted to do that, something like that full time. And then I reclassed. And before I joined the military, or no, I was still in the military. I tried to do freelancing photography, but it just wasn't for me. Like working full time and being in the Guard and then trying to take photos on the side, it just never worked out. And I wasn't really interested in taking photos of like weddings and families and posing people. And I just wasn't into that. So being in the military and doing photography just sparked that interest, which then led me to video. So when I went to school to reclass, I went to the broadcast specialist school. Because I was like, I already know photography. I want to learn something new. Mm-hmm. So I did the video portion and I loved it. I've been doing it ever since. I do more video now than photography. And that ultimately led me to podcasting. A coworker and we talked about it when I came back from school. And I was like, hey, why don't we try this? He's like, you figure it out. If it works, we'll go with it. So came up with a name, came up with the format. We shot a pilot. Our boss loved it. And that's what led me to where I am now. So definitely don't think I would be where I am if it wasn't for that day in the field, linking up with the public affairs specialist and pushing me into a different career path in the military.
Yeah, that's really neat. I didn't know that about you. I don't think I knew about that, about the photography, or maybe I did. I forgot all about it. Sorry. And that's how you and I connected was when you started doing the podcast at our day jobs. And I started coming on the show more and more, and we started to get to know each other. And then we just would kick around ideas and then eventually decided, I'd love to give you an opportunity to edit my show. And it's been great. So I really enjoy working with you. You have some great ideas. You have great suggestions. You really make it easy to podcast because there's a lot of nerves for me that still go into it every time I hit record, especially on a solo episode. I remember I texted you the other day and I was like, did I sound crazy? Did I sound like I was rambling? Did I sound like I was all over the place? And you're like, no, it sounded fine. And even if you're just saying that, you just put me at ease. And I was like, okay, thanks. Yeah. And so I know that you would like to grow your business of podcasting. And I know that a lot of my connections in my network are interested in learning more about podcasting. So I felt like this would be a really great opportunity to share your skill set with my listeners and your listeners too, because I know that you're working on the show. So I know you work on my show. What other shows are you working on? Let's give a plug to those guys.
Okay. So Hillary Saxton, she's Property Masterminds out of Australia. She's in the process of launching her second show, which is going to be called From Frozen to Fearless. Cool. So that's going to be exciting. And then working with Callie, honestly, don't know how to pronounce her last name. It's called ICU Podcast. And it's about, I don't want to mess up how to pronounce this, but interstitial cystitis or something like that. It's a bladder condition. So she's like a dietitian specific for that condition, which she is diagnosed with it. So she's very knowledgeable. Mm-hmm. And then Be the Love. It's like a energy, holistic type vibe. They're really awesome. Stacy and Brenda. And then I work for a company called Get a Helmet. I'm contracted with them and I was working for a show with them called Fearless. She just ended her contract. I don't know if she's going to continue, but she was like a business coach type, women's empowerment. Mm-hmm. And then the other show, Diana Davis, is called Pollen. I'm still working on that. So those were both coaching type podcasts. And then Pray, Work, Twerk, Repeat mm-hmm. with Christian Jackson, right. Which she's kind of on and off just because of her schedule and stuff like that. But a couple of her first episodes were really good. Yeah. And I've had a couple referrals, but we're in the process of like starting up the podcast. Like they're not launched yet. So I have a handful of clients and definitely excited to keep growing.
Yeah. And you also do some videography as well, right? Or video editing.
Yes.
In there too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can do it all. I can shoot stuff. I can edit it, put music. I do intros. I do outros. Like, I just love taking pieces of stuff and putting it together. Like, that's my favorite thing. Yeah. I love being creative. I am not a drawer. I did not get that gene in the family. So this is like the other way that I can be creative through video. And I still do photography a little bit, but my main focus the last couple of years has really been videography and podcasting.
Yeah. Cool. This is exciting times. I really love how you've taken, a skill set and taken it and evolved it. And then you've pivoted but still growing your skill set and still following what excites you and what lights you up. I think it's super, super cool. Okay. So what do you think? Okay. Maybe I just kind of came up with this question. What do you think makes a good, being an editor and, you're the one listening to our tracks and trying to piece them together and make us sound amazing, which you do, by the way. What do you think it takes to have a good presence for a podcast?
I think knowing what you want your show to be about and knowing that you have the time to put in the effort for that, it makes it easy for like you as a host, because you can just come up with the ideas, you can record the episodes, and then you just send them off to me. And I just do everything behind the scenes for you. So you don't have to worry about that. And that allows you to be able to work on other things and getting that next show ready and all that kind of stuff. So I think just being willing to put in the effort, because there's some shows that people just record and upload stuff and they don't really push it out. And then there's other shows who are like well known and everyone's listening to them. So I guess it's just the amount of effort that you put into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it sounds like know how you want your show to, not know how, but know what you want your show to be about and have a really good roadmap for kind of planning out your episodes and the information, the content that you want to create and the value that you want to offer. I think that's really important. And that's usually one of the first things that I get asked about is they're like, what do I even talk about? Or how do I even start this? Like, I've got this idea. I have this vision in my head of where I want to be with it. But how do I go from like where I am today to this vision, of what I want to create? And I feel like people they overwhelm themselves and they get too much in their head. And then they self-sabotage before they even hit record. Yeah. So I try really hard to okay, let's break it down into baby steps of what to do today, what to focus on after you get those pieces together, what do you do next? But usually after I have that conversation, the next conversation is, oh, okay, well, how do I record? What technical things do I need? And something that you and I were kind of chatting about prior to starting was, let's say you only had $100 to start your podcast. What are the things that you could do with just $100?
So the biggest thing is going to be a microphone. Like, you want your audio to sound good, or people aren't going to want to listen if they can't understand what you're saying, or there's glitch sounds or whatever. And it makes it hard to edit too. So if you're just going to start up by yourself and do everything yourself, you could get away with just purchasing a really good mic and then whatever podcasting platform you're going to use, like Lip Sync, Anchor. I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head, but there are multiple ones out there. And that's obviously going to be some kind of monthly cost, but typically they're not that expensive. So you could probably get away with just starting out with those two things, $100 or less.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. I know there are a ton of uncertainties happening in the world right now. And when it comes to worrying about the future or even dwelling too long in the past, it can take a toll on your present day. It can affect your relationships, your work, your health habits, and it can be a good idea to talk with a counselor to sort through your thoughts, feelings, and actions. And if you're thinking now is the time to get started with therapy, consider BetterHelp. BetterHelp provides affordable, private online counseling and will match you with a professional licensed therapist. You can get therapies in 4 different ways with BetterHelp. You can exchange messages with your therapist, you can chat live with your therapist, you can speak over the phone, or you can even do video conferencing with your therapist. And the cool part is you can use these different ways at different times as you wish, depending on your needs, your availability, and the convenience factor. And BetterHelp's licensed therapists specialize in a wide range of issues, including anxiety, trauma, relationship issues, stress, depression, and much more. So join over 2 million people who've decided to get help and get happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Lisa Mustard and get 10% off your first month. What about how should they record the tracks, or how should they go about that? Like what platform?
I mean, Zoom is really the easiest. It's free. You don't have to pay for anything. And as long as you have a good quality mic, you can get ones that are USB that just plug right in your computer. So you still get good quality out of that. You don't have to have this huge podcasting setup.
Right.
I mean, I know I've listened to shows where they sit at their kitchen table or they sit on the couch. Like, you don't need to have a big studio. You don't need to have all these mics. And you don't need to have a mixer and all that. Like if you want to do a studio type setting and like maybe your show's bigger and you have more money, you could go that route. But if you're just starting out and it's something you just want to be published as audio, you don't need to pay for all these crazy services unless you just absolutely want to.
Right. And then you're going to, if for under $100, chances are you're going to have to edit it yourself. I don't know. I mean, I don't know another way to do that unless you find an intern like at a school that might be learning how to edit audio. And we actually have one here in Columbia. Maybe you could work that deal if you find or if you have a kid that likes to edit. But for me, editing wasn't even, I was like, I'm not even going to go down that route because I know it's a huge headache. I didn't want to take honestly, just didn't have the time or the energy to learn how to edit. But let's say you have a Mac. What is the editing software that somebody can use? Is that GarageBand?
I've never used GarageBand. I've heard people talking about it. So I don't know how it works. It's supposed to be pretty user friendly, but as far as like editing and adding like your intros and your music and all that, like I'm pretty sure you can do it all on GarageBand, but honestly, I've never used it. So I couldn't really say that's the perfect thing to use. You can do like free trials with Adobe. I think there's free trials with DaVinci. I've tried DaVinci. It's not really user friendly, especially if you know how to use Adobe products. It's like a Mac versus a Windows computer.
Gotcha.
So,
but
I mean, if you don't want to spend more than $100, you're going to have to take the time to figure out how to edit it yourself, because to outsource that, I mean, some people charge that or more for just an episode.
Right. It really depends. It really depends. I know. Cause, I remember like, I even looked into it at one point. I was like, well, maybe I should just, to cut costs. It was not worth the headache or the sleeplessness or losing sleep, learning how to edit. So, okay, let's say you have $300 to spend. What can you then start to, spend a little bit more money on? Definitely an editor. You can then afford an editor.
Yeah, you could definitely afford an editor if you wanted to pay for subscriptions for different things, which I mean, you really don't need, especially if you have an editor that will do like a lot of the stuff for you, like show notes or make graphics for you. That kind of so you would have a little bit more money in your pocket, or you could use that for upgrading to like a editor who has more experience, or you could get a subscription to Adobe or another kind of product that allows you to edit, and you would still have to do it yourself, but it would make it a little bit easier than using like GarageBand or something like that. You could definitely get a better quality mic. Which, I mean, you could still get really good ones for under $100, or if you wanted to have like co-host, you would have the extra money to be able to buy more than one microphone. And if you needed any other equipment with that, so you could get a little bit more for your money.
Okay. Yeah, that I noticed that too. Just thinking about, you can get more options when you have a little bit more money to spend. Okay. And then what if you have like limitless, or maybe not limitless, but let's say you are ready and open to putting like $500 or more towards your podcast a month. Let's just say a month.
I mean, the sky's the limit. No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
well, I have some ideas, but go ahead. What are your ideas?
So if you had 500 or more, you could definitely do a subscription for a service that records your video, or you could purchase a camera to record so that you could have video and audio formats, because a lot of people like to upload to YouTube as well.
Yeah.
And I've edited Zoom footage and it's not that great. So if you want really good quality, there's websites that you can like subscribe to, like Riverside, I think, and it's like high quality video recording. And I can't think of any others right now, but you could definitely probably purchase a camera that would shoot really good quality. If you didn't want to do everything on a computer and you wanted to have like an actual soundboard where you can adjust your levels while you're talking, you can have sound effects, buttons, you can have the headphone adjusters, like you could definitely splurge on that. And it would just record to that system. And then you could upload that for either if you're going to edit it or if you're going to send it to your editor. So you could definitely get more in the weeds on the equipment side of what you could purchase.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was going to suggest is you could have more video, you could have more editing done. You could have more music, more special, like not special sound effects. You could just take your time also probably and really put the money into producing like a really nice video that could go on YouTube as well. I had another idea. I think that's what I was going to say. Like if you had, $800 to $1,000, I was going to say if you had like a unlimited budget, you could even rent a studio. You could go in and you could find a really nice production space and you could really do it up. I'm thinking like, I don't know if you ever watched Joe Rogan, his podcast, the way he has it set up. I mean, it's amazing. And I know that's his own studio, but you could go and rent space. You could have, you could go in for the day. You could just have this amazing space and do all kinds of stuff. And I think that's kind of like pie in the sky for me. I know some podcasters convert their garage into like a studio, the ones that are really serious about it and are like really, this is like a full-time job for them. They'll do that, or they'll take the guest room and convert it into a podcast studio. So, I mean, really, you can get pretty creative. One of the things that I love about podcasting is that it's your show. You get to call the shots. You get to decide what you want to talk about, who you want to talk to, what the content is. It's really incredible that this opportunity or this medium is available. You can just create the show and put it out on the internet. And it just blows my mind every time that I release an episode. I'm like, wow, I have this thing I've created and it's out there and people find it. So I just love it. I think it's awesome. Okay. Is there anything else that you can think of? Is there anything else that you can think of that you would add to these lists? Anything else that kind of comes to mind that's something that they would want to consider?
Definitely look into your style of like what music you want, because either you're going to have to purchase a license for it or the person who's going to edit it for you. Like I have a subscription to a specific website where I can get royalty-free music and stuff that I can use for my clients. But sometimes they want something outside of that. So having an idea, that way I'm not searching, or whoever your editor isn't searching for hours and hours for the perfect song. If you already have kind of an idea in your head, or if you've heard something, that's very helpful. And then also with your cover art too, knowing exactly what you want, because if it's not a photo of you and like you want graphics or illustrations and stuff, I'm not a graphic designer. I can do pretty much anything on Canva, but sometimes you have to purchase licensing for that stuff as well. So that could also potentially be another item that you would have to pay for. So definitely like when you're coming up with your idea and your name, what you want your cover art and your music, just keep that in the back of your head. So you're not wasting a lot of time or spending a lot of money for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah. In a couple places, I know you have a place that you get music from. I have a place that I purchase music from, and I can get a subscription to that, but it's not hard. Like you can just go on these websites and you can listen to samples of music and you can decide what you like. When I'm talking to people, I say, think of what's a podcast that you love to listen to? What's the energy of that podcast? And are you drawn to that? And that's really how I created my music or found my music. It was like, I'm really drawn to like upbeat and energetic. And that's what I love. And so when I hear a podcast and the music is like piano, and I'm like, it's going to put me to sleep. Like I want energy. I want, so I knew going into my shows, like I want the music that really like gets me excited. And I get excited every time I hear my little intro. As my friend Mike says my groovy little music. Every time he hears my groovy music, he's excited for me. Oh, and then one more thing that I think is important is a lot of the times people want to know about a website, and some of the platforms, well, actually, I guess all of the podcast hosting platforms will give you a website where your feed is going to live. At first, you don't really need to worry too much about creating a website. You can just use, like I have Libsyn. And so Libsyn gives me a website page for all of my episodes. So you can go to it's like libsyn.com/The Therapy Show. I don't even know what it is, but you can go there and all of my episodes. So you can always just point people to that website that host is going to give you. But if you do want something the next level, which would be creating your own website, there's going to be, fees for that. You got to create your website and design it. A lot of the folks I talk to, they already have their websites. So, then it's like letting them know that they would just create a page on their website, and then they could, depending on which host they use, it can either like automatically sync onto that website if there's like an integration for it, and if there's not, then you have to upload them, on their own. But that's not too complicated once you learn how to do that. So that's another thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you're planning out your podcast, because you want to have a place to point people to. You don't want to just share it only on like social media, because we all know that social media, you just don't get it in front of as many people. The podcast in itself is a searchable item in the different podcast platforms. Like in Apple Podcasts, it's searchable. So another tip is to think about what is the title of your show. You want to be using keywords that are going to be searchable for your audience to find you. So that's something that we talk about also when I'm chatting with people. But I just wanted to like get all of this out there and encourage people that they can do this too. That, you and I, we just haven't had an interest and a passion, and we went for it, and here we are. And we're doing it. So I know that other people who have this vision or this dream to do a podcast can totally do it. So where can people find you?
So they can find me on Instagram, Podcast with Chelsea. I do have a website. It's kind of just like a portfolio type thing. That is chelseaweaverpodcasting.post.pro. And it just like has my current clients. You can contact me on there. I don't do Facebook. I made a Facebook page, but Facebook isn't really big for promoting like business stuff. I don't feel like Instagram is where I get most of my interest and connect with people and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll put all the ways to contact you in the show notes. So if you didn't catch those, don't worry. You can always reach out to me, and I can point you to her and how to best reach her. And are you still doing the freebie?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm still offering new clients their first episode free. I have a startup package, which includes like your intro, outro, mid-roll, cover art, music, all that fun stuff for a small fee. And then I always offer the first episode for free. That way that we can make sure that all the kinks are worked out. It's exactly what you want. And we know that we're a good fit to work with each other. So yeah, I'm still offering that, and I definitely still have some slots available. So if anybody's interested and want to connect, just reach out and we can figure it out.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I appreciate it. You just dropped so much wisdom and so much knowledge for our listeners. So thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Hey guys, before we end this episode, if you are liking my content, if you're liking my podcast, be sure to go over and leave me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you are up for it, I'd love it if you left me a review as well. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.